Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. Again, my name is Matt Radlack. I'm joined by our co-host, Dave Gibson.
Hello. Good to see everybody.
Yeah, and we are here for another episode of State of Cybercrime. I
Uh,
always like to kick off the show with some good news, as a lot of times in cybersecurity, everything is doom and gloom, and we like to think about like the end is coming, or how the next exploit is going to be what ends the internet. But there is a lot of good stuff that goes on.
Speaking of good guys, we had another win for the organized good guys. Um, this is Operation Red Card, well named, and hooray! Recovered over 100K, seized over 300 people and 1,800 devices. I should say they arrested 300 people. They may have also seized them. I'm not sure, but the hacking group spanned 7 countries in Africa. There were over 5,000 victims. And this was typical cybercrime, social engineering scams, sim box fraud, which I had to look up what that was. Apparently, you can buy a box and kind of get multinational sims and plug it in, and that allows you to kind of make like you're calling from other countries really easily and kind of bypass some of the tariffs and things like that. And obviously spoof folks as well, and then investment fraud as well, online casino fraud, things like that. So hooray for the good guys taking another one down. Looks like working together can actually do some stuff.
Yeah, that's a lot of red cards.
It's a lot of red cards. You're right. Definitely out of the game. Let's hope.
Of red cards, another one was given to another one given to King Bob, a 20-year-old that linked to the Scattered Spider threat actor group. King Bob was pled guilty to cybercrime charges. He was arrested alongside 4 other members of the group in January of last year. Scattered Spider, for those of you that don't know, is well known for recruiting young people, carrying out high-profile attacks on large organizations, notably MGM and Caesars Entertainment back in September of 2023. This group uses phishing messages in order to gather stolen credentials, access victims' accounts, steal confidential cryptocurrency. And what King Bob did was pled guilty to aggravated identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud, ultimately agreeing to pay a total of $13 million in restitutions to 59 different victims.
Kind of a splattered spider.
Speaking of cheesy pins, we'll jump into our next segment, AI Vey, that'll surely leaving you saying AI Vey, talking about our ultimate demise to the robot overlords.
We have probably one of the scariest things that I've seen out there. There's another new. I mean, we've talked about AI-driven hacking technologies or kind of cyber offensive technologies driven by AI. This one, Xanthrox, if I'm saying it correctly, is a little scary because it's self-contained infrastructure. It doesn't rely on one of the public-facing models, which means that there's no real gateway, there's no guard, right? That it's your own, it's the model that you can do what you want with it, and it's not going to try to say you should only use this stuff for good. But it's got it looks like 5 separate models for code generation, vulnerability exploitation, data analytics, as well as voice and image processing, all to make hacking easier. It looks like it can even go hands free. It can also work offline, right? Because the models are running in their infrastructure. They don't need to be connected to the internet. So going to be, you can potentially hide some signals. So I think this is, adversary leveling up, definitely. And kind of reminds me of some stuff that Ray Kurzweil used to write, right? I think it was like Soul of Machine, or I'm not getting the title right, but I used to talk about good AI versus bad AI. It's certainly seems like it's getting to be the future really quick.
Now,
Once in a while.
I'm talk about a spam bot that's able to bypass captchas. Can you imagine that? A Kira bot, an AI-powered platform that's used to spam website chats, comment sections, and contact forms, pretty much to promote dubious search engine optimization services, has targeted over 420,000 websites and successfully spammed about 80,000 of those since September of 2024, all with the goal of generating customized outreach messages. What's interesting about this bot is that it can bypass captchas because it uses fake browsers. It can even mimic real user behavior with tools like Selenium. And Akira, interesting fact, is built on OpenAI, and it's even using proxies to avoid network-based bot detections. This is a lot of effort to generate I wonder, is it the success rate of these ads for these kind of, not as well ranked search engine optimization services that makes it worth it?
Yeah. Hey, Matt, we did get a request in, and I'm hearing it too. I think your audio is breaking up. I know that we're going to be heartbroken, but maybe try turning off your camera for this. Maybe Zoom.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
but meanwhile, this story was really interesting. So, as you know, AI hallucinates. Um, it's gotten much better, but it still does hallucinate. And apparently, when you're using AI to help you write code, one of the things that it can hallucinate is dependencies. And even some of the newer models like GPT-4, right, it hallucinates at about 5%, which, if you think about the number of prompts, that's still pretty significant. And the other thing is hallucinations are often repeated, right? So, okay, you're writing a code, you want to write a Python script, right? And it inserts a dependency, a library that doesn't exist. And it's doing that regularly. And so what attackers are doing is they're saying, "Hey, I'm going to write that library and make it available." And of course, these libraries are malicious. So dough. Yeah, don't trust your AI with your dependencies if you're writing code. You got to verify the package names. Never assume that a package that is mentioned in AI is real or safe. You can also use some dependency scanners, lock files, and hash verification, right, to make sure that the dependencies to the code you write are trusted and known. So this was something that it's kind of a new supply chain attack that you got to watch out for if your developers are using AI and they're just taking the dependencies for granted. That's another vector that we got to watch out for. This is called, it's actually has a name, it's called slop squatting.
Well, let's jump on to our next segment, vulnerable vulnerabilities, where we've got quite a few of vulnerabilities to talk about, including what I think is a pretty heavy Patch Tuesday. So Microsoft has released fixes for about 120 different vulnerabilities this Patch Tuesday, including a 0-day identified as CVE 2025-29824. CVE 2025-29824 is a use after free vulnerability in the Windows Common Log file system that leads to privilege escalation all the way to system level privileges. Microsoft's tracking the exploitation of this under the threat actor Storm 2468 and associates pipe magic as the delivery mechanism for the exploit and the ransomware payload. Now, there's a lot of vulnerabilities that came out on this particular Patch Tuesday. This is just the most dangerous one. And so, as always, when we cover vulnerable vulnerabilities, the best thing you can probably do is patch.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was interesting. Self is used by event logging and SQL and Hyper-V, Windows Update. So it's definitely something you can't delete. And
Yeah,
definitely
turning it
want
off
to patch.
probably not an option.
Yeah. This was interesting. I think we all remember Move It. And you can do your little dance there. But this is similar. There are actually two file sharing platforms, CenterStack and TrioFox, that have a deserialization flaw. And it's got a CVE. We can drop that in the chat if we want to. But essentially, they both have a hard-coded machine key in their, I guess, the web.config file for IIS, right, the internet server. Now, this is, it's basically, it's a vulnerability, right? The attackers can use that knowledge. And this is, leading to some havoc here. It used to be common, apparently, kind of something people did to have hard-coded keys. These days, they're usually randomly generated. So, this is kind of something that somebody forgot to patch, but now I believe it has been patched. This is a CVE that they're dealing with, but similar stuff.
Yeah, now speaking of things that were forgotten to patch or overlooked, a threat actor is offering 0-day exploits for an unauthenticated remote code execution vulnerability in Fortinet firewalls that leads to full control of Fortinet systems. And that's not the only vulnerability of interest either. Another one is a symlink backdoor, which impacts the SSL VPN-enabled Fortinet devices. So it's also discovered with about 20,000 vulnerable devices.
And what happens here is a symbolic link between user file systems and root file systems, which is used to service files for SSL VPN, is vulnerable to attack. Now, fortunately, this symlink backdoor is fixed with an upgrade, but it's unknown what's behind the threat actor and the zero-day exploit and what's going to come of that.
Yeah, and it looks like this, these three vulnerabilities that were released may have been discovered because of this threat actor kind of, offering the data on the dark web, right?
Yeah, we'll throw those in the chat. I think that's 2022 42475, CVE 2023 27997, and CVE 2024 21762.
Yep, excellent.
Now, what's going on at MITRE?
Well, it's a great question. So it obviously MITRE, all of these CVs are tracked at MITRE, which was in danger of closing as part of the cuts. But luckily, they got an 11-month reprieve, and I guess because of this, the threat of MITRE shutting down, there are a lot of other folks that are looking to step in and potentially provide a backup to MITRE, which we all depend on. I think we can all agree that vulnerabilities probably ought to be tracked accurately somehow, somewhere. So I'm glad that we didn't get that shut down without having some kind of backup. That would have been a bit of a pain in the neck, to understate it.
Well, let's get into our last segment, the danger zone, where we've got a couple of things to talk about. And then, like I mentioned before, we're going to bring on a special guest.
Yeah, so this story has to do with some pension funds in Australia that have been compromised. Unauthorized activity on some of the member access portals and several of the pension funds. Some people have lost money, and it looks to be some credential stuffing attacks. So compromised credentials. And did we say that attackers aren't breaking in, they're logging in yet? That's seems to be what happened. That it must be, I didn't read it specifically anywhere, but it must be folks that either without MFA or that they had some of their MFA bypassed in some way.
Yeah, and I feel like credential stuffing is just a fancier word of saying log in, right? The attackers logged in, Yeah,
exactly.
Now, what I think is the juiciest story of today, and I'm really excited to talk about, I mean, there might be some debate about this, is what happened with Rippling and Deal. So an employee of Rippling who was considering leaving the company for a competitor called Deal entered into a deal with Deal's CEO, all the pun intended, to siphon information on sales leads, product roadmaps, customer accounts, and strategy in exchange for €5,000 a month. The corporate espionage lasted in total for 4 months, and the lawsuit accuses Deal and Deal's CEO of engaging in the theft of trade secrets and corporate espionage. Now, what this makes me wonder, an HR company with a bribery problem. If these accusations are true, I'm not so sure their moral compass is in line.
I believe that this is frowned upon by most HR departments.
It's certainly against HR policy.
Yes.
Now, what's going on at the Treasury?
Actually, it looks like there was some persistent access to about 100 accounts and 150,000 staff emails for over a year. So nothing much really. But it's the compromised accounts belong to deputy comptrollers, international banking supervisors, and some other staff. A lot of sensitive emails in there. And the access was basically there were some compromised administrative accounts that allowed them to read the email of these other staff members. So that's a lot of information there that is just not protected.
Well, I think now, why a lot of people have probably joined us today is to talk about the debate around the Oracle breach. And for me, what I'm wondering is this breach a lesson of what to do versus what not to do when communicating around a potential breach? Or maybe is this a case of synthetic data, and does this, debate signify a new era in breaches and misinformation campaigns, because critics are casting light into the lack of transparency and accountability by Oracle, because it's so important that companies communicate clearly and acknowledge their responsibilities for protecting data, especially large cloud service providers, and acknowledging breaches. And threat actor Rose 87168, though, has claimed that they've stolen 8 million records from Oracle. And what Oracle is going and saying is it's from Oracle Classic versus Oracle Cloud. And David, I know you've done a lot of investigation into this, and then we're going to have our guests come out too. Are we reading lawyer speak, or what's going on here?
I think it definitely folks are confused, and there is a lot of speak and a lot of messaging, or it on behalf of Oracle, and a lot of people trying to understand it. I would say that I can't conclusively say that Oracle is hiding the ball, but it definitely doesn't seem like they presented the ball in a very clear way. I think if we look, is it a duck? Does it walk like a duck? Does it quack? It's like, well, okay, customers have confirmed that there's data belonging to them that has escaped. There's definitely a vulnerability in that I think there was a previously patched vulnerability in Oracle Access Manager and some others that look like they could be involved. They are acknowledging the breach not in writing but verbally when they're on the phone. So I think there's strange things are afoot, and people are speculating. That's for sure.
Yeah, and just because we really wanted to talk about this, we're being joined by a special guest from Varonis Threat Labs and Varonis Forensics today. We're going to talk a little bit about the Oracle breach and overall breach preparedness. So please join me in welcoming Joe Avanzato. Joe, what's your take on all this? And for everyone that might not know Joe, should you ever engage with the Varonis incident response or forensics team, and you need to get real deep or real wide into host-based memory, or study a threat actor or eradicate a threat actor, eliminate command and control, Joe's probably the guy that you're going to work with, or somebody from Joe's team. So Joe, what's your take on all this?
Yeah, hi Matt, hi Devin. Thanks for having me on. It's interesting. There's a lot of misinformation or going around right now. There's a lot of confusion because there's multiple things happening concurrently right now on this topic. So, like you mentioned, in March of this year, a threat actor going by that moniker, Rose 87168, they posted on a site called Breach Forums, which is commonly used for buying or selling breach-related information, such as credentials or databases. They posted what they claimed was evidence of their access and exfiltration of data from Oracle Cloud. This incident is entirely separate from another recent issue involving Oracle's recently acquired medical record vendor, formerly known as Cerner, now known as Oracle Health, where there was allegedly some PII and PHI data exfiltrated. That was discovered in Oracle in February of this year. So there's kind of two incidents happening almost concurrently, but they're totally distinct companies and systems and vendors in that sense. Now, if we're talking about the original issue surrounding Oracle Cloud, the threat actor, like you said, they claim to have exfiltrated a ton of data, a lot of records, and they claim it impacts over 100,000 distinct customers based on their analysis of what they've stolen. And it seems to be a focus on credential-related information. So hashed and encrypted passwords, they claim, LDAP dumps, other database materials such as employee data. If this is legitimate and if it's actually recent data and not stale, then it could have a serious impact on customers if this data makes its way into the public. And so far it hasn't. They've posted this on breach forums. They're trying to find a buyer for this data. I believe they mentioned they had talks with Oracle as well and tried to extort them to the tune of something like $10 or $15 million to not release the data. And as proof of their access, they've done a couple things. So they've posted a couple snippets of some of this data, LDAP dumps and database extracts, some columns and rows from what they claim is the data. They've also posted a video of themselves allegedly interacting with Oracle customer support while logged in with one of the compromised user accounts. Oracle has initially denied that anything suspicious happened involving Oracle Cloud. And starting around April 7th, it seems like they are acknowledging that a hacker, did access and publish data, but they claim it's from only obsolete servers, things that are in no way, shape, or form connected to Oracle Cloud. So I think, we're still kind of waiting to see how this plays out. And as recently as yesterday, on the 17th, this threat actor is still trying to find a buyer for this data. So there's a lot going on here, a lot of moving pieces and parts, but it's very interesting. I think that, there's not really been a third party true verification that this data, should it come out, is going to have the type of impact that they claim it will. And I think that's what people are still kind of waiting to see what happens here.
So was there a breach or was there not? I think that's the question that today's episode is going to leave us with. And if there was it an Oracle Cloud, Oracle Classic? Is there some kind of cover up involved? Is it fake data? Is all this story, not for anything? Leaves us with a lot of questions.
Yeah.
It's a cliffhanger for sure.
In the meantime, I guess, Joe, what are some of the things you would do, to kind of mitigate any potential risk?
Yes, if I'm, anytime I hear about a new vulnerability or a new breach, the advice that we're going to give is, step one is you have to understand what's your enterprise exposure to this potential risk. That's what it's all about, right? Managing risk when you're an enterprise. So you have to understand if you use Oracle, if you use Oracle Cloud, if you use Oracle Health or Cerner, as they're formerly known as, you have to understand what's the potential impact to your data. What are you using them for? What are you storing in their cloud services? And if it's things like passwords and credentials and certificates, then probably not a bad idea to look at mitigating that potential risk of exposure by rotating those credentials, resetting passwords, etc. This is about, understanding what you use and mitigating risk to those items. So that would be my key recommendation anytime we hear about potential credential exposure. Obviously, data exposure is a different story, and there has to be more from Oracle on the specifics of that.
Yeah, and I'm really
Advice.
interested to see, sage advice. I'm really interested to see if there's some kind of rename cover up involved with like archive.org. There's definitely some tomfoolery going on in this particular incident. Well, as always, everybody, this show is made possible by you, our audience. We love engaging with you. I saw a few questions come in. How will I know if my healthcare providers are using Oracle Health, and what is the time frame for providers to notify me?
I was going to just say, healthcare providers,
Yep.
any SaaS provider, really, it's kind of transparent to you as a consumer of that service, what they're using on the back end. And then I think it would require very pointed questions to understand if if you suspect that that's the case. But please, David.
No,
I
I
was
don't
gonna,
think a
and
healthcare
yeah,
provider is going to tell you whether they're using Oracle or they're using an Etch-a-Sketch. They do, if they're public though, they do have a kind of a, I know what's it, 72-hour stint file.
yeah.
A
I
little
was
bit
thinking about the
releases them.
FCC regulations here, as
Exactly.
well as the individual state data privacy laws. So if that system or cloud was being operated in a state, or there were consumers in a state, like Colorado data protection, California consumer data protection, Pennsylvania breach notification. I mean, there's so many different states that have those requirements. So either that or the SEC, these are going to be the regulators that'll come knocking if it hasn't been reported already.
There's also health and human services government. The federal government department also has specific rules around breach disclosures and notifications. It depends on how many people are impacted, the number of records, what's in the records. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Well, big shout out to our special guest, Joe. Thanks so much for having us. And thanks for tuning in to another episode of State of Cybercrime.